Hello and welcome to People and Profit. I'm Charles Pellegrin. This week we look at the state of play when it comes to artificial intelligence in Europe. The common narrative goes as follows. The old continent is lagging behind the United States and China and risks being permanently distanced unless leaders do more. Do more to simplify EU and national regulations, to provide more incentives to businesses, and to make sure its workforce has the necessary skills, just to name a few priorities. While U.S. tech giant Amazon and Amazon Web Services' 2026 report on AI adoption in Europe echoes many of those concerns. Here are some key figures that support it. While businesses are increasingly integrating AI into their processes, advanced AI adoption is not advancing fast enough. Only 22% of respondents say they are using AI's most advanced capabilities, notably agentic AI. Then regulatory uncertainty is hindering adoption and growth. Respondents are saying that 42% of their tech spending is dedicated to compliance. And finally, 38% of European startups say they would consider leaving Europe to scale their business. Well, for more on this, let's turn to someone from AWS, Sasha Rubel, who is head of generative AI policy for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. She joins us now. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Happy to be here, Shab.
So, Sasha, what does Europe lose if advanced AI adoption stays at current levels? Is this primarily a productivity issue, an innovation issue, or ultimately a competitiveness issue?
I think, Shab, it's all of the above, but even more than that. What we're seeing right now is that more than 54% of businesses you evoked have adopted AI across the EU, which means there's incredible effervescence and conviction that will not only change the way we work, but also the ways in which we live and learn. This represents more than a 600 billion gross value added opportunity between now and 2030, but 191 billion of that 600 billion pie is actually about moving from the most basic stage of AI adoption, which is we've adopted AI for an internal chatbot, to a more advanced stage of AI adoption, which looks at what would we fundamentally do differently if we put AI in the center. And if we don't harness this opportunity, we as Europeans, we miss out not only on the economic benefits, but also the social and cultural benefits that come along with it. So my 96-year-old father using a generative AI chatbot to access his social security benefits in France, even though he doesn't understand the internet and email. So I think we need to look at it as a productivity and efficiency question, as a competitiveness question, as a social and cultural question, and fundamentally an economic one altogether.
This same sentiment was actually echoed earlier this week by the CEO of Japanese tech conglomerate SoftBank, Masayoshi Son, who's heavily investing in AI. He dispelled any of the naysaying around this transformative tech. Take a listen.
Those who refuse to evolve are closing down their world. Those who condemn AI are themselves spitting upwards.
So, Sasha, do you agree that companies delaying AI adoption risk becoming uncompetitive? And let me put my cynical hat on, is this him just overstating the case because he's heavily invested in the tech?
So at the AI Action Summit that was hosted in Paris by President Macron last year, Macron said something that I think encapsulates it really well, which is 100% we need to focus on the misuse of the technology. How can we mitigate risks related to the technology, but also how this technology can help us in itself address those risks. But in tandem to the misuse, we need to focus on the misuse of the technology. What does it represent if we miss out on what this opportunity represents, not only, again, from an economic standpoint, from also a cultural standpoint? And right now, what I hear over and over again in the interviews and the conversations that I have with our customers and organizations is how do we make sure that we make Europe the best place to scale and not just start? Fundamentally, right now, 4 in 10 startups would consider leaving Europe. And when you look at startups at the most advanced stage of AI adoption, it moves to over half. And they consider moving because of access to capital and funding, predictable regulation, and the ease at which they can scale in other jurisdictions. So that means that we're losing out not only on innovations like in France, Ictos or Calliope or Mindflow that are completely changing the AI ecosystem and the competitiveness in France and beyond, but we miss out also fundamentally on future tech leaders and keeping those tech leaders and those jobs and those taxes and those social innovations in Europe and making sure that we're growing from Europe to the world. So I don't think he's overstating it.
There's quite a lot to unpack here. You mentioned the 38% of European startups saying they're looking to move abroad in search of a more pro-growth environment. I was looking at the report and I was trying to try and guess what was the question that was asked to these businesses in the survey, because there's one case where they're saying they want to leave because they want a better environment elsewhere, but there's also one where they say they want to leave because they want to scale globally, and that's what you want to do. When you want to scale globally, you move abroad. It doesn't necessarily mean you're casting any aspersions about the place where you started.
What we're seeing is that these companies are saying, well, we want a headquarter abroad. We want to move outside of headquarters of Europe to another jurisdiction. And there are several jurisdictions that are under consideration there because of access to finance, because of this predictable regulation, and because of the ease at which they can scale. So 100%, when I talk to businesses in France every day, do they want to be French champions? 100%. Do they want to be European champions? 100%. But they also want to be global champions. And France has everything it needs, and Europe, in order to compete at that global level. It has incredible research, incredible innovation. What's missing is the connective tissue and the enabling environment around regulatory predictability, access to finance and competencies, so skills, to make sure, reverting to what I was saying earlier, that Europe is the best place to scale and not just start. And we're not losing those companies headquartered elsewhere. Afterwards, in terms of the methodology of the report has a mix of methodologies. We interviewed for this report via Strand Partners that we commissioned the report to 17,000 businesses and 17,000 citizens, which I think is really unique because we wanted the business voices of different sizes of companies, but we also wanted to hear how citizens felt about what this opportunity represented and what their priorities were. And it helped us understand not only those citizen priorities, but also fundamentally did the different kinds of adoption between startups, SMEs, which make up more than 98% of the EU economy, and larger enterprises.
Want to go to another finding. Has to do the slow adoption of AI has to do with a skills gap. You mentioned it. Businesses are having trouble finding the people with the necessary skills to properly integrate AI, advanced AI. Is the problem a shortage of specialists, or is it just that companies don't even know how to get organized to begin with?
That's a great question. I would say both, and I'll dive in to both of those sides. One is that right now, more than 50% of businesses say that they lack the necessary digital skills to adopt AI. And in countries like France, where I'm from, it can take up to 7 months to find somebody with the necessary digital skills, which is really a precursor to being able to adopt AI, because you need a lot of other building blocks in place to make sure that you're adopting AI in a way that unlocks ROI and long-term value. So the approach of just AI it is not the right one. The approach is, let's start from the business challenge and look at how AI can help us address that challenge, is really a fundamental part of moving towards advanced AI adoption. And right now, almost 30% of businesses don't have an AI strategy. I was talking to a CEO the other day who was saying, Sasha, I've been asked to write a strategy on AI for the next 10 years. How am I supposed to do this when I don't know what's going to happen in the next quarter? Right now, what we're seeing, Shal, is that leadership is fundamentally changing in an AI era where everybody needs to be learning together. And we have to go from leadership being about having the right answers to fundamentally being about asking the right questions of what actually is possible today that wasn't possible before, because we have the AI capabilities and the access and availability to deploy them.
I want to finish on one last finding that we mentioned. One of the challenges to AI adoption, the report underlines, is regulatory uncertainty, especially because of overlapping national legal frameworks within Europe. The report says businesses estimate that 42% of their technology budgets are devoted to compliance. What does that mean exactly? What kind of compliance are we talking about here? And also, is that 42% number just people self-reporting how much they spend on these things, and then you averaged it out? How did it work?
Great question. And I just like to flag that in France, the percentage dedicated to compliance, Charles, is the highest in the EU. It's 47%. So 47% of overall IT spend goes to compliance in France because of the regulatory complexity. And more than 80% of businesses anticipate that that will continue to rise. And Mario Draghi has a phrase that I love, which is we have a digital single market in the EU for toothpaste, but we don't have a digital single market in the EU for artificial intelligence. And it's something that comes up over and over again in the reports, but also in conversations that I have with businesses. 41% of businesses see regulatory fragmentation inside of the EU as a barrier for them to scale inside of the EU's own market. So the IMF estimated that to be equivalent to 110% internal tariff on innovation. So how do we shift that money that's going towards compliance towards innovation while making sure that safety and responsibility stay at its heart? Diving deeper into your question, when we broke down, well, how are you spending that money and what is that money going to? A large majority of it was dedicated to managing relationships with national authorities. So responding to requests for information or documentation, interplays between things like the EU AI Act and the GDPR, and if you're in health, the medical devices regulation, and a large majority of that going also to external legal advisors. Because let's be frank, if you're a startup and you're building in the EU, you maybe have two founders, one who's a business co-founder and another who's a tech co-founder. You don't necessarily have the legal and policy teams to help you navigate what is fundamentally a complex web of regulations. Right now in the EU, 68% of businesses don't understand their obligations under the EU AI Act. And so making sure that the rules are clear and simplified, like initiatives through the Digital Omnibus, which is an important first step, is absolutely essential because it provides clarity on what can and can't be done. And when there's clarity, speed can accompany responsible innovation, which is what Europe most needs in order to unlock long-term competitiveness with this technology.
Sasha Rubel, you're the head of generative AI policy for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at Amazon Web Services. That's unfortunately all the time we have today. Thanks for speaking with us on France 24.
Thanks for the conversation and thoughtful questions, Charles.
Well, that's all for this week. Thank you for watching. If you want more, you can find older episodes on the People and Profit page on the France 24 app or on the podcast platform of your choice. Just search for People and Profit. See you next time.